Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will be starting with our webinar in a while. Thank you. Once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third day of our Smart Homeschool webinar series. For this afternoon, our topic would be on independent homeschooling, vis-a-vis homeschooling with a homeschool provider. For this afternoon, I am pleased to welcome to you or to present to you our speaker. He is one of the USC Senior High School faculty member and just currently defended his thesis in the same university. So without further ado, let us all welcome Mr. John Ismael Medina, LPPRPM MA CAD.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm tasked to share with you the difference between independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider. So thank you, Ms. Kia, for that wonderful introduction. So again, I'm John Ismael Medina. I'm a registered psychometrician and also a licensed professional teacher, and also taking up my master's degree in clinical psychology at the University of Santo Tomas, to which I'm also affiliated as a senior high school teacher. So before we go on to the difference of independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider, let me just share with you what is homeschooling all about. So homeschooling, it's parent-led, home-based education, given that we have a lot of things happening around us, and given that we're experiencing a pandemic right now, um, it's been an option for a lot of parents to have their children or their child homeschooled. So it's parent-led, meaning that the parent is the one acting as the facilitator, as the educator. It's also home-based, meaning that the learning process happens in their home or in the house. So it can be customized. The learning process in homeschooling takes on many forms. So since this is parent-led, you're the one who schedules the activities. You're the one who prepares, mostly if it's independent. You prepare your materials, the curriculum, what are the lessons, the things that you're going to do, the agenda per day of your child. And also, it may include employing a tutor or online resource and sharing the job with other homeschooling parents. So, if you're not really that kind of person who would like to teach your child because you're not really confident, or you don't have the background, or simply that your schedule does not approve of you teaching your child, then you could also hire a tutor or an online resource person, or a provider who would help you in homeschooling or teaching your child. So for some students, especially older, more independent learners, studying is usually self-directed, although parents are still involved. So as we can see, when it comes to the educational system here in the Philippines or the process of learning here in the Philippines, what happens is that the parents usually help their children, especially in their developmental stages, in their years in school, first years in school when it comes to learning how to set their minds or how to prepare them mentally. So as we grow or as the children grow, that is when we let them explore more on themselves on how they're going to learn. So the difference when it comes to that is in homeschooling, we're more um, we're more in touch, we're more hands-on as compared to them going to the traditional way of going to school. In homeschooling, we have to make sure that the progress of our children or of your children rather um, is being monitored properly. So as I've said, it's parent-led. So that's the key term when it comes to homeschooling. So you're the one who is preparing, who is leading your child or your children comes to their learning. So similar factor is that the parents are also steering the whole process. So that's according to the Homeschool Association of the Philippine Islands or HAPI in 2020. So another is that the Philippine Department of Education, or DepEd, expounds on the definition and guidelines surrounding homeschooling and policy guidelines on K-12 basic education program, order number 021 series of 2019. So you can check on that and read on the policy guidelines on basic education program. Primarily, when we talk about homeschooling, it's more on the basic education. So when we talk about basic education, it's from kindergarten until senior high school. So parents or guardians who opt to enroll their children in a homeschool program should do so through a public school or private school. So you have an option whether to enroll your child in a public school that offers homeschooling or a private school. And make sure that those institution or educational institution actually has a permit or was given a permit by the Department of Education for the homeschool program. And you must also ensure that the schools are in charge of the following. So first, the school must make sure to you as the parent that you are assigned as the learning facilitator. So what's the difference between being a teacher and being a learning facilitator? So with the advent of technology, as you can see, the teacher's role change. Before, we are supposed to be the source of information. We teach, we are a vessel of information. But because of technology, because of Google, everything could be searched online. So what happens is that we became a facilitator instead. We help the children or we help the learners learn in their own way. We help them, we provide them with the necessary information, with the knowledge. So that's why instead of us being called as teachers, we are now being called as facilitators. So as a facilitator, a parent facilitator, or a parent teacher, that's the term that is used in homeschooling, your primary role is to facilitate learning. So children can learn and your role is to assist them, to guide them in learning. So letter B is that the learner is registered through the Learner Information System, or LIS, of the Department of Education. So usually the Learner Information System is generated when you first enroll in kindergarten, and then you also have the LRN. So that is fixed until you graduate in K to 12. Next, the learning materials and resources are available for the learner. So you have to make sure that if you're going to enroll your child in a homeschool program, that the materials and resources are available for your child, and it's suitable, it's appropriate for the age and the level of your child. So the materials includes the curriculum, the activity materials, and so on and so forth. And then also the school form, sorry, the school form 9 or the Learner's Progress Report Card, which usually is given um, after kindergarten and on the succeeding levels of your child. So other pertinent school records are also issued to homeschoolers. So homeschooling creates an environment where customized and personalized learning takes place. We, as parents, I think that it's one of your major concerns on choosing the educational institution on the values, on the methods that the school is employing when it comes to their students, or what are those values that your child is being taught in school. So this one in homeschooling, your child is given an opportunity to excel academically, and at the same time, you're being able to customize and personalize learning. So instead of them going to school traditionally from 8 to 5, or let's say for instance from 7 to 4, or whatever schedule your child might have in an educational institution, you could actually customize the schedule. You could actually change that depending on how you want it as a facilitator, or how you and your child want it as a team. And then more importantly, the amount of time spent together as family allows the parents to be the primary influence in the lives of their children. So since the learning process happens inside of the home, you make sure that the primary influence of your child though, is you. So yung the values that you want to inculcate to them, those things that you want to teach them as a parent, is you're sure that those things are being inculcated to them properly. Okay, and you make sure then the other influences or other things or other people who or that might influence your child is being eliminated or is not already in the scene anymore. So one concern when it comes to homeschooling is their socialization. So usually when talk about homeschooling, ang unang natatanong sa atin is paano yung socialization, because they don't have classmates. So parang close sila sa family nila. Will they be sheltered? So actually, according to a resource or a reference, children socialize vertically rather than horizontally, so they become less peer dependent. So since you're the one who are socializing with your child, they become less peer dependent. So they don't have classmates to ask or to be dependent on, kasi they have to rely on themselves because they don't have classmates. So in a way, the sense of being independent is being built on your child. Okay. So we also have here criteria for choosing a school. So usually when we talk about choosing a school, we choose according to the values and the methodology. So the same thing happens when it comes to um, homeschooling. You have to choose, of course, that school which values being taught to their students coincides with the values that you want your students to have, and also to their methodology. So when it comes to methodology, we're referring to the methods on learning. Kung online ba siya, or will the materials be sent? Does it have to be printed out, etc.? So these are some criteria that could help you um, in choosing the school. So next is the difference of independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider. So now that we understand what is homeschooling, so let's differentiate the two. So first, independent homeschooling. So it's a term used if you're not really connected to a accredited provider. And homeschooling with a provider helps you accreditation for your children's homeschooling. So the main difference in and independent homeschooling or homeschooling with a provider is that in independent homeschooling, you're the one preparing everything from the papers, materials, the curriculum, etc. And then homeschooling with a provider is a different naman, because you have a certain educational institution which helps you or assists you in homeschooling or teaching your child. So most, if not all, uses Department of Education K to 12 curriculum as their guide. So if you choose to um, have independent homeschooling, you have to study the Department of Education K to 12 curriculum, um, and the policy as well, because your child has to take a certain examination in order for them to be accredited. So next, here in homeschooling with a provider, accomplishment of the learner or of your child are officially accredited and released in transcripts in compliance with DepEd accreditation requirements. So main difference is that since independent homeschooling siya, ang nangyayari, ikaw yung mag-a-apply for the accreditation. And homeschooling with a provider, the provider would actually apply for the accreditation of your child in the Department of Education. So in a way, it's less hassle. And then um, the accomplishments as well are accredited. The grades are also accredited. Um, and then the transcript or the records are also passed on or submitted to the Department of Education. Next, you have the liberty of choosing your own materials, including books, and set your own schedules, including deadlines for outputs. That's for independent homeschooling. So as I've said earlier, when it comes to homeschooling, you have to prepare. You're the one who's leaving the education or the learning process. So you independent siya, so you have your own schedules, you have your own deadlines for your outputs. So this one in a way is an advantage, especially if you're working and you have a hectic schedule, since ikaw yung bahalang mag-set ng deadlines when you're going to have that one submitted, and then at the same time, when are you going to check it? However, in homeschooling with a provider, they follow a certain schedule. So it means that you're connected to an educational institution, just like in traditional form of education. The only difference is that the learning process takes place in the house or in the home. So nandun pa rin yung schedules, you have to follow that. Nandun pa rin yung deadlines, which is set by the provider and not by you. So that's one of the difference when it comes to independent and independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider. Next, in independent homeschooling, you as a parent teacher takes charge of everything. So you keep track of the following: the progress of your child in the lessons. So what activity or what are those content that you are already discussed, and what are those next lessons that you're going to teach them. And then you also have to keep track of the grades and the levels, the grades of your child and the levels that you're teaching. Schedule the Philippine Education and Placement Test, or the PPT. This is the one I am referring to earlier. So the PPT or placement test is the one that would help you get your child accredited for DepEd. And the necessary documents and activities. So this one includes examination books, curriculum, extracurricular activities, etc., which could also be, in a way, um, be compiled or prepared by you naman talaga. But the difference nga here is that you're the one choosing the books, you're the one making the examinations, you're the one preparing the curriculum when it comes to extracurricular activities. Let's say, for instance, field trip, you're the one setting the arrangements, scheduling it, etc. Because you're the one who is in charge. Next, in homeschooling with a provider, regardless, it's regarded as painless way to homeschool. So meaning painless, you don't really have to worry about choosing the right books, choosing the curriculum, preparing the examination, or kailan ba kayo mag-field trip, kailan kayo magpa-family day, or kailan kayo mag-PPE, etc. Because the homeschool provider actually sets that or prepares that for you. The only thing that you have to do is to deliver that to your child. And then you follow a certain curriculum, but you're free to enhance and expand the lessons as you see fit. So there's certain curriculum, there are materials, lessons to be taught to your child, but but you still have that liberty to expand the lessons depending on how you see your child is progressing on the lessons that you're teaching them. Okay. So what are the pros and cons of independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider? So when it comes to accountability, first thing is that if we're going to compare the two, independent homeschooling has more accountability as compared to homeschooling with a provider. So when it comes to independent homeschooling, ikaw yung magpe-prepare lahat, ikaw din yung magde-deliver. So it takes a lot of time. So some people might say that homeschooling with a provider is more um, beneficial or more appropriate if you have a busy schedule. If you are a housewife naman, on the other hand, you could probably prepare or have more time when it comes to preparing those things for your child. And then for the assessment, this pertains to the examinations, the quizzes, the activities that you're going to employ or ha- um, have your child done. So when it comes to this, I would say that it's balanced because in independent homeschooling, you're the one preparing it, but at the same time, um, the advantage is that you see the progress of your child and it's really customized and personalized. So you know that you're measuring or you are actually assessing something that has been taught to your child or something that is actually parang natutunan niya na. Meanwhile, in homeschooling with a provider, this examination is somewhat fixed. So the difference is that pwede na hindi nila masagutan yun based on how they understood it or how you taught it, and at the same time baka may mga examinations na hindi pa sila ready but it's scheduled already, so they have to take it. When it comes to support, I would say that homeschooling with a provider has more support as compared to independent homeschooling. Although there are a lot of support groups on social media and online when it comes to homeschooling, but when it comes to being a facilitator, learning facilitator, I would say that homeschooling with a provider has more social support as compared to independent homeschooling. The reason is that in homeschooling with a provider, you're provided with an advisor to whom you could or ask for questions or advice. So importante yun, especially if you don't have the background when it comes to education. So if may questions ka on the lessons, so pwede kang mag-contact sa kanya dun sa advisor or dun sa teacher or dun sa mismong provider. As compared to independent homeschooling, that you have to parang self-study for that. So if you have questions, you go to the internet and then you search for that. So that's the difference when it comes to support. For the accreditation, this one pertains naman on um, the levels, the grade levels, the accomplishment of your child. So comes to accreditation, the homeschool provider provides less hassle way of accrediting or accreditation as compared to independent homeschooling, because in independent homeschooling, ikaw mismo yung mag-a-apply para dun sa anak mo. You also have to schedule the PEPT, just like what I've said, as compared to the homeschooling with the provider, wherein the provider would be the one to set it on your behalf. And then for the cost. So for the cost, well, it actually depends on you. I would say that there are a lot of people who says that homeschooling is less costly as compared to going to traditional school. But in a way, it's almost the same because you have to prepare, you have to look for materials. For of course, you want the best for your child, so you look for quality materials, right? If you're going for the homeschooling with a provider, then you would look for a good provider, right? So I would say that the costs doesn't really um, ano ba? It's not really different when it comes to homeschooling with a provider and independent homeschooling. Okay, so next. So how do you prepare your child to homeschool? So you prepare them physically and psychologically. So when we talk about preparing them physically, you have to establish a routine to them and also to you as the facilitator. So you have to schedule the activities, including break time rather, for your child. So they would, in a way, be prepared, or they would know what to expect for that certain day. So since you'll be with them for the whole day, you have to schedule the time from starting from that time that they have to wake up until that time that your lessons are would end. And then next, psychologically, so set their minds about homeschooling. So if you're transitioning from traditional education, traditional schooling to homeschooling, then you have to explain to them, bakit ba kayo mag-homeschool? Ano ba yung purpose? And ano ba yung difference? What should they expect from homeschooling? So that yung transition nila or adjustment nila psychologically when it comes to their minds as well is not that really hard. And then teach them to be organized. So that's one of the things that actually uh, we could consider it as a challenge when it comes to homeschooling kasi they're in their comfort zone, they're in their house. So in their house, syempre, we're allowed to do whatever we want. So kapag nag-homeschool na, syempre, you have to change that. They have to be organized. They have to know their schedule. They have to set a certain space for them to learn. Okay, hindi pwede na kung saan lang sila, parang kung saan lang nila maisip, okay? Because it's more effective if you're going to have your own space when you're studying. And then you also have to set boundaries. So one of the things that you have to consider as well is that you're the parent and at the same time you're the teacher. So um, kailangan may boundary that in when you're teaching their child or when you're actually um, facilitating learning to your child, meron kayong boundary na this is the time for you to learn, this is the time for us to play. Okay? Because if they confuse the two, you being the parent and being a facilitator, baka mahirapan tayo. Okay? Comes to that. And yung learning process then might be jeopardized. Next is you set goals. So you have to make sure that goals are set every day or quarterly or every month. Depends actually on your preference. Okay? So it's important that you set goals so that monitor natin yung continuous na progress or process of learning dun sa child. So these are some tips on homeschooling. First, establish a good study habit to your child or to your children. So make sure that the study habit on the process of you facilitating learning na establish din sa kanila kung paano ba mag-aral. Okay? Ano ba yung separate time for them to study with you and study on their own. And then it's also beneficial if you actually know their learning styles. So when it comes to learning styles, those are the different um, styles on how a person's learns. So pwede siya na visual, pwede siyang auditory, kinesthetic. So there are lessons that you have to consider na matututunan ng bata kinesthetically. So kailangan may activities, kailangan nagko-color or kailangan may ginagawa sila. However, there are also lessons or there are also people naman on the other hand na natututo visually, so they have to see, they have to prepare visual aids or PowerPoint presentations. Some are auditory, so they have to listen to that. So it's very important or it's very helpful if you're going to know the learning style of your child and at the same time how they want to be taught then. So parang in a way uh, it's partly a teamwork with you, okay, and your child. And then kids learn best rather when they believe their teacher and fellow students care about them. So you have to make sure that um, your child knows that you care about them, not only physically, but also when it comes to their education. And then kids learn best when they have opportunities to pursue their interests. So one thing that we have to consider in homeschooling or one of the benefits that we have comes to homeschooling is that yung interest ng bata or nung child or nung learner is napupursue niya because the learning is not enclosed in a room. It could be outside of your house as well. So yung interest nila, napupursue nila. Okay? And then also yung lessons, as I've said earlier, could actually modify it into something that you see fit to your child. And then also kids learn best when they can make choices and participate in decisions about their learning. That's what I've said earlier, that para siyang teamwork, okay? How do they want to learn this, okay? How do they want this lesson to be taught to them, okay? So importante yon. But not all the time naman that you're going to um, ask them, because there are certain lessons na fiction na ganito siya ituturo. Okay? So parang you have to also have a keen sense of understanding the lessons and how it will be delivered. Next, kids learn best when they can observe older students who model what success looks like. So this one is actually based on the reference that I saw online. So, meron silang model. So, behavior modeling is very important as well. So, kung ano yung nakikita ng bata sa iba, especially when it comes to older people, yun yung ginagaya nila. So, since wala silang classmates when it comes to homeschooling, you're the one who's primarily their model. So, kung ano yung pinapakita mo sa kanila, yun din yung gagawin nila. So, we have to um, show them kung paano ba maging eager when it comes to studying, how to be versatile when it comes to homeschooling, etc. Kids learn best when they have a teacher who is available to provide feedback and support, which is very apparent when it comes to homeschooling, because they don't, it's very focused dun sa learners. So yung feedback and support when it comes to the lessons, when it comes to the activities, is always there. So kayo yung magpo-provide nun as the facilitator of learning. Kids learn best when what we ask them to do matches what they are ready to learn. So dito na papasok yung sinasabi ko kanina, that you have to prepare them psychologically. So you have to set goals so that yung expectations nila would match your expectations to them, and then yung learning process would be something that is successful. And then kids learn best when they can experience what they're studying firsthand. So since it's not enclosed in a room or in a classroom, yung homeschooling, the good thing about this is that kung nagtuturo ka about plants, about photosynthesis, pwede kang actually magkaroon ng props, or pwede mo silang turuan kung ano yung mga bagay na hindi natuturo sa school usually, but you have the resources, or you have the resources at home. So in a way, parang kumbaga, we also have to be creative as the learner, the facilitator of learning. And then kids learn best when they have plenty of physical activity, sunshine, and fresh air. So when we talk about homeschooling, the learning process takes place in school, at home, but not necessarily naman na palaging nasa loob ng kwarto or nasa loob ng bahay. They could have activities outside of your home, in your garage, or somewhere else where there is physical activity and fresh air. So yun yung mga importanteng tips that you could apply when it comes to homeschooling or preparing your child for homeschool. So generally, again, to wrap up, when it comes to independent homeschooling and homeschooling with a provider, independent homeschooling, most of the accountability is yours. You are the one who prepares the curriculum, the materials, etc. And homeschooling with a provider, less accountability since the materials are already prepared by the provider. You just have to buy them and deliver them to your child. And when it comes to support, um, basically more support on homeschooling with a provider as compared to independent homeschooling. And then when it comes to costs, so fairly the same. And then when it comes to assessments, so you have to prepare everything, if not most of the things, in independent homeschooling as compared to homeschooling with a provider. So generally, my take is that in independent homeschooling, if you have a lot of time, if you have the luxury of being with your child most of the day, then probably you could consider independent homeschooling. But if you're working or you have a hectic schedule, then probably you could consider homeschooling with a provider. So these are the references for my presentation. That will be all. Thank you everyone for listening. So now we could go to the questions.